Hey everybody, this is Perch. Every now and then I do videos where I talk about, I don't know, what a business can do. In this case, like what, for example, Marvel slash Disney can do to promote their comics. And a lot of these ideas are relatively small. The common thread, and I don't see a lot of people talking about this, but the common thread is a lot of these ideas are free or would take very little money to invest in. Like, for example, the concept of on Disney Plus before you roll the latest episode of Agatha, whatever it happens to be, you run an ad saying, "Yeah, there are comics in the comic store that have Agatha, and they're like this." How much does that cost Disney? Well, not quite nothing because you have to pay a designer to actually do this, and you have to have a meeting where you talk to the person who's in charge of that content, and you have to put it there. But it costs next to nothing. Like literally, that's intern level work. And some people pointed out, I threw this idea out there, like, yeah, but they'd rather take money from real advertising sources rather than comics. Yeah, except the problem is there are no ads on these things, or the ads are for Disney Plus things, and you don't have to remove those. You can keep the Disney Plus ads up there and show a 10-second, hey, remember there's comics, dumbass. Now, keep in mind, I don't think this idea changes the world, and I don't think people immediately flock to comic stores and do things. It's just an easy layup of cross marketing. And so I'll throw this out there, and invariably, several of you will come back with this response, which is not wrong, but it is flawed. And I'll explain why. The response of, well, yeah, but Disney doesn't care enough to do this. That Marvel comics are just like a tiny little bump on their business, and it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. And uh, the problem is um, that ignores some pretty important things. Sure, look, does Disney as an entity have zero cares for Marvel, the comics company? Well, no, of course not. Otherwise, they'd just shutter it, or they'd outsource it, or they'd put it somewhere else. They obviously care a bit because they continue to pay the bills and put that thing on. And keep in mind, I hear a lot of people talk about business on YouTube who have clearly never done business. And like there's some common sense stuff. If any of you work for a professional company or have any kind of actual white collar type company you go into or anything, some of this stuff is true. Stuff like no, there's not just like this slush fund of money. I heard somebody once describe of does this was an actual video's point from one of the everything is woke, fuck everything kind of channels, and it was, well, Disney doesn't care about Marvel. And what they actually do is they pay Marvel out of petty cash, meaning every now and then, Gabriel and some of those other guys will go to the petty cash drawer and they'll pull out cash and then they'll hand it to David Gabriel. And that's what David Gabriel uses to pay the bills. They just get like wire transfers, and that's how they keep Marvel alive. And that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. First of all, Marvel is reported as part of the annual report. You do not companies do not wire bits of cash to Marvel in New York. I mean, that's just absurd. It would cost more money to do that than just having the entity set up in SAP and dealing with it like a real business, because it is a real business. It could just be a much better business with some little tricks. So, I say this partly for you guys to hear, but also in the hopes that, you're an assistant editor or you're an entry level person at Marvel. You've just started working there. You're making, peanuts of a salary. Hopefully you have ambition. You don't want to stay at this job. Let's say you're 26 and you've landed this, assistant editor, gig at Marvel, and you're very excited to work on the characters you grew up with, and you're super excited to turn Spider-Man black and gay. I'm kidding. But you're very excited to be with Marvel. But all the same, I think, hopefully in your mind, you're going, one day I'll be editor and then chief editor. And someday I'll kill off Tom Brevoort and take his money and wig. And you have ambition there. Or you're thinking, this will be a good thing on a resume. And, my true passion is social media advertising and marketing. And I'm hoping that I can get a job where I'm making like $250 a year. I'm currently consulting with a company and doing some things where the marketing gig, the PR marketing gig, pays 360 a year plus 40% bonus plus 40% equity. So that's what you should be shooting for. That is a true marketing job where you're making good money. And so if you're sitting there at Marvel, what you should be thinking is this: how can I advance within Marvel? Or if the company is too stupid to advance in, and only because who your boss is, and maybe there's a way there, maybe there's not. It's not all about success. Sometimes it's about politics and who you know and being in the right place at the right time and all that other bullshit that all of us deal with in whatever job you currently have. But if your idea is, what I need to do is show cross marketing capabilities. Basically, how do I get advertising that is cost net neutral or, or zero in layman's terms? How do I get that experience on my resume? So then when I go and, try and get a job at Shia Day or Edelman or whoever it happens to be, you can basically say, yeah, I created a campaign based off of a streaming show that was getting 2 million views, and I was able to cross promote that with this company. Sorry, and create corporate synergy, and I was able to do it at cost net zero, and you know this was an example of me doing cross collaboration with other business units in order to achieve a stronger business result. If you can memorize that, what I just said, and then have some proof to back it up, pardon me, you're gonna your idea, your desire to either get promoted or another job gets better. And so I think a lot of people on YouTube are like, but they just don't care. I don't know if the company doesn't care or not. Does Disney lie awake at night trying to think of what the comic business at Marvel is doing? Of course not. Of course not. But does the assistant editor, borderline intern at Marvel care about putting something on their resume where they're able to get a, piece of art that promoted a comic book in front of, 2.5 million views, whether it was successful or not? That's marketing is about, are you able to create a campaign at, positive cash flow, and are you able to do that in an efficient way and put it in front of people and then run a campaign? And, if you, I mean, put it this way, if you're a low level person at Marvel or DC, you have a vehicle in HBO Max, or Disney Plus. Both of these entities will run house ads. They do it all the time, and they, they basically are always looking for content to run house ads on. There's some other schmuck over at the streaming service who's just looking to put product placement in with their shows. So if you were to go there and say, all right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create an art. You're going to run this campaign for 1 month. We put a QR code on there. See, I'm making it more complicated. That would take you to, marvel.com, but we're going to put a little refer tag in there so we know how many people actually use a QR code to get there. And we're going to promote a comic book. Most of us listening, I'm guessing, could do that ourselves in the course of about 15 minutes. In the time it's taken me to record this video, I could very quickly go to Photoshop, put a background, say, buy comics, motherfucker. You wouldn't put that, but buy comics, put a little picture of whatever, ties into the show, and go to, freeqrcode.com and make a QR code, put a referral in there to marvel.com, and, basically with a tag of, promo 01. And within 10 minutes, you could have this done. You could then hand it off to the ad placement or the pre-roll department, and up it would go. You don't need to get a lot of approval to do this. It's pretty much, it's your ambition. We can't hide behind the fact of, well, the corporation doesn't want to be doing this kind of shit. The corporation, in many cases, doesn't care. So if right now you work for Marvel or you work for DC, just do a little work. You have access to the company, address book. Figure out somebody over in Max, say, hey, I'm curious how you handle advertising for your streaming shows. They'll get you in touch with some, assistant shithead to talk to you. You say, if I gave you something, would you put it there? I want to do a little test. You could do all this with pretty much no approval and nobody signing off on it. and you could run this ad, and it could be on TV, and you could have, you could track the usage, and all of that experience hopefully is good for comics, because that's why I'm giving this advice in the first place, or hoping that it does at least something. But at the very least, I'm trying to appeal to you, the little assistant editor who's looking to make something of themselves. This is the kind of stuff that you put this case study of what you did on your resume, and you will get a better job somewhere else where they actually pay you money and give you benefits. Like that should be the dream. You want to do that. And I think, all it takes in comics is really amazing, because all it takes is just a little bit of ideas and ambition from pretty low level people, because a lot of the people higher up in the company do not give a fuck about this. Now, keep in mind, I'm giving you this advice. It could be that you discover that, HBO Max, or sorry, just Max, has some kind of weird ass approval process to put videos in, and it would get to a VP, and then you got a whole other batch of trouble on your hands. But why not try? If you work for a comic company, I dare you, give it a try. See what you can do. Be curious. I mean, look, I've seen the comics you're producing. You're not spending all that time, reading and editing comics. So take some of that time, spend a little bit less of it on Instagram, and, try a few things like this. Try a few experiments, because it's that kind of stuff that is gold. I have interviewed tons of people. I've seen a lot of people come into work, and everybody's like, "Oh, you worked at Marvel for a little while, and then you did this internship here." And it's like, yeah, but while I was at Marvel, I actually worked with the media department at Disney to run an ad, and this was the campaign we ran, and this was the amount of click through that we got, and this was something we were able to do for no money, and we ran this experiment from start to finish in 2 weeks. And like, if you are able to say that in an interview, you're gonna get that job. So try it. This is a win-win. It's a win for you. You get the fuck out of comics and get to doing what you want to do. It's a win for me and comic fans, because, maybe, just maybe, we direct some people from these shitty shows to your shitty comics, and then we all make money. I'm joking. Look, again, like I said in the other video when I was talking about this, I don't think this is $1 million idea, but I think it's worth the $0 you could put in with it. I mean, I don't know what they're giving assistant editors at Marvel these days, but if you've got Photoshop, and you've got, I mean, hell, you could even do something really janky with PowerPoint. They wouldn't run it. But if you have any kind of design skills, if you are able to talk to, Jesus Christ, if you reach out to Mark Brooks and you're like, "Hey, how would you like to draw a character for an ad on Disney Plus? I'm not going to pay you shit, but your stuff will be on TV." There's 50% odd he would do it just for the thrill of putting something on TV. I mean, just, and you have mountains of stock art. This would be very easy. So give it a try. See what will happen. Comics and all of this stuff we talk about will change, will evolve, and will improve if we try. But we've got to try. It's not most of the ideas will fail, but if you try 0 ideas, you have a 100% chance of nothing getting better. So try 10 ideas, and if one of them hits, you are far better off than what you're doing these days. So anyway, I just want to point that out. I think a lot of people, as I said, especially online, they overthink or wrong think business. Their view of how Marvel works is kind of like how the show Suits works on USA. Like it's not how it works. Most business is actually quite dry, quite boring, but there are little opportunities to get things done. And by and large, if you're a person who likes to get things done, very few people are going to stop you. I think there's this misnomer on YouTube that there's this, woke brigade of gatekeepers that if you're like, "I'm an aspiring editor who just wants to try and make some money for the company, but there's this blue-haired bitch who just is always there and be like, it's not gay enough and I can't get anything done." No, most people, you're overthinking it. If you I think they took it off, but if you watch that Dan Slott episode, it was on Disney Plus. I remember it was Inside the Magic, or I don't remember what that thing was called, but it was basically a little documentary on how a comic gets made. And the comedy of it was that shitty Iron Man 2020 series he was doing that was just fucking awful. And you got to see I think I see Christos Gage and you see Dan Slott and you saw John Brevoort and others in there. And lots of people have the takeaway that Dan Slott was, basically wasting a ton of his, fat time on Twitter. But the reality was the big takeaway I got from that show is almost everybody is lazy AF in this company. They just are lazy. They're not doing much. They're, so what do you do with a lazy person? You help them not work. And if you can help them not work, they will reward you by handing over massive amounts of control. And if you don't care too much, like some people get hung up on the wrong things. Like, for example, if you do this little ad idea, Tom Brevoort may swoop in and be like, I always thought this was a good idea. And what you're going to need to do is smile and let him take that credit. Because that guy's just going to die at the job. You, meanwhile, are getting a case study that you can put on your resume and hopefully get a better job. And meanwhile, people win. So try some stuff. Why not? I mean, what do you have to lose? Well,